Hi, my name is Chris Melnick, and I'm a realtor in Halifax, Nova Scotia. How do you know an area is good? How do you know if a neighborhood is good? These are questions that I'm often asked that are hard to answer. What does good even mean? Good is very subjective. This is because what people really mean is whether it's good for them. And since I don't know who's on the other side of the screen, I'm going to instead give you the tools to find out whether an area is a good fit for you. These are a lot of the tricks I learned when I used to work in retail commercial real estate, where learning areas was the #1 priority. To begin breaking this down, let's try to look at an objective measure of good and go from there. To start, crime. I think most people would agree that areas with crime are not very good. For a representative view on crime, we can look at the Halifax crime map. Link in the description. This is for the past week or so. We begin to notice some patterns. In general, the more dense an area is, the more instances of crime there are. Technically, there could be less crime per person, but there are still areas that are more concentrated. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to live in an area where cars are constantly being broken into and people are getting assaulted. In general, the more rural and more affluent the area, the less crime there is. And then, of course, the inverse is true too. Here's a map of homes over $700,000 that have sold in the last year. You'll also notice some patterns. Many people would consider these the good areas. And when you think about it, it would be a fair assessment. If you have a higher budget, you have more options, and you choose what's best for you. And if many wealthy people are trying to compete for homes in the same area, the prices go up even further. So the price of the home would be at least some measure of the desirability. This isn't to say that less expensive neighborhoods are not desirable or a good place to raise a family, but this gives you a rough lay of the land. In learning about areas, I find you have to start somewhere to develop reference points, and then further refine and refine your view. Next, we'll look at what would be the subjective attributes of areas. I'd suggest starting to look at amenities and attractions you would like to be near or not near. This would include your work, parks, grocery stores, churches, restaurants, coffee shops, beaches, schools, golf courses, etc. Some people consider being close to the types of places they plan to frequent good. This also helps you refine your perception of where the business centers are because they're usually a hub of sorts. Another thing you can focus on is where businesses are that really speak to your lifestyle or identity. For example, if you're really into healthy eating, look for health food shops or specialist grocers. Because when those business owners choose their locations, they want to be where they can reach most of their client base. So if you were to live nearby, you're more likely to find people who are like you and may feel like you fit in better. This works best for the types of businesses that are found in the smaller strip malls, whose reach is mostly the immediate area. If you can brainstorm the key demographics that an established business has, you're more likely to find those types of people nearby. Next, thanks to Google, you can also check on both the live and typical traffic patterns. Some people really value an easy commute or don't want to be in a busy area. By looking at patterns throughout the day, you can avoid these areas. Periodically, you can also look on Google Streetview in the different areas. Do the homes and buildings look run down? Do the streets look clean? Can you see yourself there? These are all valuable pieces of information. All of the things I mentioned can be done from your computer realistically in a day or so. Next, once you've narrowed down your search, it's best to start driving around. Just by seeing the traffic, buildings, and people walking on the street, you can further refine your view on areas. Ideally, you would be doing this at different times of the day in different seasons. It's also very worthwhile to take a look in some of the local amenities that everyone uses, like grocery stores. Just by doing some people watching, I find you can get a very good idea of the vibe of the area. Just make sure to look at different times of the day. If you're only there when everyone's at work, you're likely only to see retired people. Similar things can be said for going to coffee shops and restaurants. At the end of the day, the more you experience and interact within a community, the more you'll understand it. I used to go to sit-down restaurants during slow times and in between ordering just ask the server some casual questions. What do they think of the area? What's there to do, etc. I find you can learn a lot just by listening and by finding excuses to talk to people. Then when you start focusing more on neighborhoods, you can also start looking at turnover. In general, if a neighborhood is good, people want to stay there as long as possible. If it's problematic, they leave. On Viewpoint, it shows active listings as blue and properties that have sold in the last year or two as red. If you see a large amount of recent sales, there's probably a reason for that, unless it's a brand new neighborhood. Whereas if little to no homes have sold around there, that's a very good indicator it's a good neighborhood. There's exceptions to this, like around military bases. Oftentimes people in the military are forced to move regardless of how nice the neighborhood is. You can also look on Explore HRM to check for zoning. As mentioned before, areas with greater density or near commercial or industrial areas can have issues. But sometimes those buildings just haven't been built yet and the area is zoned for it. With the HRM quickly developing, that could be your new neighbor in a couple of years, and that may give you guidance on where to avoid. And that's how to learn about what areas are good for you. Like always, I've hoped you've got some value out of this video. My contact information is in the description. Goodbye.